In 1983, the world came within minutes of total annihilation, but one man's decision changed everything. In reality, Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov judged a radar alert as a false reading, preventing a nuclear exchange between superpowers. This time, imagine he made the opposite call. This is the story of how that same warning triggers the launch of hundreds of nuclear missiles. Cities vanish in blinding flashes, skies fill with soot, and the path of human history bends in an instant, plunging the world into chaos. Let's dive into how one man's fateful choice rewrites the entire course of civilization. No warnings are walked back. No false alarm is called in. The officer on duty sees the alert. A Soviet early warning satellite detecting what appears to be 4 U.S. missile launches, caused, in reality, by sunlight reflecting off high clouds, and assumes it's the start of a nuclear strike. In this alternate history, Stanislav Petrov isn't there to question it, or if he is, procedure wins out. Over doubt, the signal goes up the chain exactly as the system was built to do. Soviet launch protocols leave little room for hesitation. Once a possible attack is confirmed, information moves fast to the highest levels of command. The decision is made within minutes. Keys turn in blast-proof command posts. Encrypted codes are sent to missile bases across thousands of kilometers. Submarine crews surface long enough to verify their launch orders. Before diving back under the waves, the doctrine is simple. Retaliate before incoming warheads can destroy your ability to respond. Acting on this mistaken alert, the Soviet Union does not fire a token return strike. They unleash a large-scale nuclear salvo, hundreds of ICBMs from land silos and submarine launched, ballistic missiles from under the seas. Each carries multiple warheads aimed at US and NATO, military, industrial, and civilian targets. In many cases, a single missile splits into several warheads mid-flight, each on its own path toward a different city. From the moment of launch, the clock is short, about 30 minutes to most US targets, and far less for Western Europe. American radar systems detect the launches almost immediately. Massive dishes in Alaska, Norway, and along the continental US scan the horizons, tracking dozens, then hundreds of trajectories. Computers confirm their origin. Soviet territory. Alerts race to the Pentagon and the White House. Nobody treats it as a drill. Orders go out to Minuteman missile crews in underground silos. Ballistic missile submarines receive their firing codes. Strategic bombers begin to scramble. Cold War launch doctrine assumes very small decision windows. At most, the US president has under 10 minutes before initial impacts can cripple communications and command. That's long enough to confirm and authorize, but too short for deliberation. Under this pressure, the US launches a massive counterstrike almost at once, sending its own ICBMs and submarine-launched missiles toward the Soviet Union. NATO allies, watching their own radar screens fill with incoming warheads, face the same pressure to respond, and many prepare to launch as well. Flight paths ensure that some targets are hit far sooner than others. The US East Coast has mere minutes more warning than Europe. Cities like New York, Washington, D.C., and Boston vaporize before anyone can fully absorb what is happening. On the West Coast, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle are struck within moments of one another. Western Europe, London, Paris, Bonn, is already burning by then. Across the Soviet Union, the American counterstrikes land with equal ferocity. Moscow, Leningrad, Kiev, and industrial hubs, Urals erased in seconds. Within 15 minutes of the first detonations, most major cities in North America, Western Europe, and the Soviet Union are gone. The electrical grids collapse, shockwaves flatten, structures far beyond the immediate blast radius. Fires spread unchecked, merging into sustained firestorms that consume whatever remains standing. The sunlight is replaced by the glare of nuclear fire and black pillars of smoke stretching for kilometers into the sky. The flash from a nearby detonation is more than bright. It's blinding, searing the ground with heat intense enough to melt asphalt and warp steel. Anything combustible ignites instantly. Those beyond the immediate vaporization zone are battered by supersonic blast waves, hurled through debris or exposed to radiation surging into the atmosphere and drifting with the wind. And still, this is only the opening chapter. The devastation in these first hours is measured in cities lost and millions dead, but what follows will reach billions. because the real killing power of these weapons comes after the firestorms begin to fade. Thousands of mushroom clouds rise across the globe, each blast 10 times more powerful than the one that flattened Hiroshima. In seconds, entire city centers are shredded into dust. Concrete towers collapse with the force of the shockwaves. Roads split apart. Stadiums, office, blocks, and neighborhoods vanish under piles of rubble. The heat flash ignites anything that will burn: trees, cars, houses, while anyone in the open is instantly scorched. Clothes catch fire, skin burns in fractions of a second. Even miles from the blast, windows shatter, and fragments slice through walls and bodies. Radiation begins pouring from the detonations almost immediately. Fallout clouds climb high into the sky, swirling with ash and radioactive dust. Winds start to carry them far downwind, blanketing areas that weren't even part of the original targets. Survivors from the first wave stagger into streets covered in debris, many already sick from exposure they don't yet understand. But for those still alive after the initial shock, the real danger hasn't even begun. The fires started by the blasts grow into firestorms. Heat rising from the flames pulls in air from all directions, feeding itself. These superheated columns punch smoke into the upper atmosphere, far above the level where rain can wash them out. There, the soot and fine particles spread, forming a dark veil over huge parts of the earth. Within days, sunlight at the surface dims to a twilight even at noon. Heat from the sun is blocked and temperatures begin to drop sharply. This is nuclear winter. With enough cities burning, the particulates in the stratosphere spread around the northern hemisphere, cooling it by double digits in just a few weeks. Seasonal patterns collapse. Places that should be warm in late summer see frost. Regions that normally get rain go dry as weather systems stall. The cold fronts are relentless, and no quick thaw is coming. At the same time, the ozone layer is shredded by the chemical reactions kicked off by the explosions. With that shield weakened, ultraviolet radiation from the sun becomes even more intense on the ground for the hours it still reaches through the haze. Crops already fighting. Reduced light are now damaged by UV exposure, stunting growth or killing plants outright. Skin burns faster. Eye damage becomes common, even in areas untouched by bombs. Survival starts to split along geographic lines. The northern hemisphere, where most of the war happened, takes the hardest hit. Freezing nights arrive in regions that never got them before. Agricultural belts in North America, Europe, and Asia are ruined. In the southern hemisphere, conditions are still harsh, with cooler temperatures and reduced rainfall, but some growing seasons survive. These differences set the stage for desperation and migration on a scale no one has managed before. The food crisis builds quickly. Wheat, rice, and maize fail across their main production zones. Livestock die both from the cold and from hunger. Once stored feed runs out. Fishing fleets can't operate with fuel reserves gone and ports destroyed. With roads and most rail lines blocked or in ruins, rivers turn into the only viable routes for moving goods. Any town with access to navigable water becomes an important stop for trade, if it can defend itself. By the end of the first few months, famine joins radiation sickness as the top killers. The first wave of deaths from starvation starts in cities where food stores run out and no new supplies arrive. Refugees pour into rural areas, stripping anything edible from fields, forests, and barnyards. Disease follows, spread by weakened bodies in crowded shelters. By the year's end, the human population has collapsed. Between direct strikes, radiation, the freezing climate, and hunger, 3 out of every 4 people are gone. In many regions, the loss is even higher. The survivors live in fragments of the old world, clustered in habitable pockets, or on the move in search of safer ground. And with the national governments erased or crippled, the fight over what little is left is about to begin. Who rules when nations fall? In the chaos after the bombs, centralized governments aren't just weakened, they vanish, capitals are gone, ministries, military headquarters, even the idea of a functioning nation-state is erased overnight. In the early months, regional officials try to act like nothing's changed, issuing orders from shattered city halls or surviving bunkers. But without communications, resources, or a military chain of command, their authority fades fast. What's left is a world where the only power that matters is whatever you can defend in person. Local groups fill the vacuum. Sometimes it's a surviving army unit with a hard-edged colonel who already controls the only fuel depot for miles. Other times, it's religious leaders rallying, people under promises of stability, or ex-political officers who still command loyalty from old, party networks. Even mundane pre-war groups, police precincts, neighborhood watch groups, even sports clubs can morph into armed factions if they can organize and hold territory. It's a fractured map where a nearby valley might be ruled by an improvised militia and the next. Valley over answers to a preacher who's declared himself chosen by God. Over time, two broad cultural reactions start to emerge. In one path, there's a push toward strict religious restoration. People cling to ancient laws, dress codes, and traditions, convinced that the old world's moral decay triggered its downfall. In the other path, the response is almost the opposite, an openness to totally new power structures, belief systems, and cultures. Think less Mad Max cars and leather, more scavenged fabrics, layered knitwear, and whatever can be handmade from scarce materials. A warlord's court might have an old generator running, only for a single amplifier, so a battered electric guitar can play while guards stand watch with salvaged rifles. Material culture has shifted in strange ways. Things once common are now luxury goods. A pair of intact blue jeans can serve as a gift to cement an alliance. A box of pre-war batteries might be traded for food. Without industrial supply chains, most clothing is worn until it disintegrates, then reworked into something else. There are no shipments of diesel, river. Transport becomes king. Control a stretch of navigable river, and you control the closest thing. This world has to an open trade route. Even though the cities are ruined, some of their bones remain. As radiation levels drop to safer thresholds over years, survivors start picking through old industrial zones. Scrap metal is scavenged for tools and weapons. Oil supplies are rare, but whoever claims one can power. Small engines or barter fuel for allegiance. Areas blessed with fertile land and clean water become centers of fragile prosperity. Alliances grow here, but they're uneasy. Shared irrigation, ditches or joint harvest protection might last a season before collapsing into raids. One surprise lifeline comes from a system built decades earlier, the internet's core backbone. Designed in part to survive a nuclear strike, fragments of that network still function. Isolated, scientists, engineers, or radio operators can exchange vital information across continents. Outside, in the wider ruins, most people don't even know it exists, but those with access use it to share agricultural techniques, repair manuals, or news of still functioning machinery. It's not enough to rebuild the modern world, but it seeds limited pockets of coordinated progress. Warfare doesn't vanish. It scales to fit the new world. In the beginning, it skirmishes over warehouses, crop fields, or water pumps. Later, as factions grow stronger, they fight for entire river basins or stretches of coastline. Groups that secure oil and ammunition manufacturing first are almost untouchable in their regions, their influence stretching far beyond their core territory. The pattern starts to resemble the breakdown of power after the fall of empires. Small states rising and falling, alliances forming and shattering. In some isolated pockets, peace and stability hold long enough for craft, learning, and culture to recover. A traveling scholar might teach reading to children in exchange for food. Villages set up workshops to make hand tools from salvaged steel. Over centuries, these places could be the seeds of a new civilization. From the ashes of devastation, the next human era begins to take shape, not as a return to the old world, but as something entirely new, forged in the shadow of the war that almost erased us. Even now, nuclear systems still depend on human judgment under extreme pressure. One false reading on a radar screen could start the same chain reaction. Technology has improved, but machines can still fail, and people can still make fast, irreversible decisions. Avoiding disaster isn't just about better systems. It's about the choice to wait, to question, to hold fire. Restraint is as important as any weapon or defense we've built. The difference between a normal day and the end of civilization could come down to a single person in a high-pressure room making the right call. Humanity's survival may rest on whether that person hesitates long enough to be sure. What epic what-if world would you explore next? Share your ideas below. If you loved this video, smash that like button, subscribe for more mind-blowing alternate histories, and hit the bell Our next adventure drops soon with another game-changing twist. Catch you in another world of the wildest what-ifs.